Joining us now, Jim Leggette, lecturer of economics from Mississippi State University. Hey, Jim, how's it going today, sir?
Doing great. I'm joining you from my undisclosed location in Starkville, and it's a beautiful spring day, and we're going out to watch baseball this evening. So,
Awesome.
all in all,
Awesome.
not a bad day.
Sounds like an excellent day. Those of us who are paying attention to the Dow aren't having a great day, and that, of course, we just talked about it in the last segment, is due to Fed Chairman Jerome Powell going to the Hill this morning and telling lawmakers that he might have to keep raising interest rates to get control of this pesky, stubborn inflation, which thus far doesn't seem like any of such increases in interest rates have done the trick. Your thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, I think what we're learning or relearning is that inflation is a stubborn thing, and it's awfully hard to get rid of. And we have made progress. I think the peak inflation rate was 9. We're around 6 now, which is still too high in my mind. And me being a purist says it should be 0. But so I think it's going to be a rough ride. I would imagine he's going to get a tongue lashing when he what's he at the Senate Banking Committee?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to get a tongue lashing. In fact, you and I are sitting here chatting about this. It's timely. Sometime about 1 o'clock, I'm going to introduce the Fed to my students. So
Okay.
It's not just something made up. And the observation you also had that we lose track of, I could make a case that certainly whoever the chairman of the Fed is the most powerful person in the world in terms of economics. That's what. And maybe it shouldn't be that way, but it is.
Well, I mean, I think the thing that's most concerning about that, Jim, is the fact that this individual is not elected by the people.
Well, that's right. That was done on purpose. We could argue whether it's the right thing or wrong.
Sure.
It was done that way. And I found you were talking about the 400 PhDs at the Fed. By the way, I went to look see what mine said. It did say Dr. Clark. Because I couldn't remember. But what I was going to say, there was a fellow, he did win a Nobel Prize. Ever heard of an Austrian guy named Friedrich Hayek?
Sure, absolutely. Studied, read Mr. Hayek's works.
I think it was in his Nobel lecture. He talked about something called the pretense of knowledge, which I bring it man in the street to. You think you know what you're doing, you're messing with something you don't understand, and you usually mess it up. Think of you and I trying to fix your car, fix your computer, and we think we know how to do it, and the best thing we should have done is walk away from it because then we leave the professional has to undo that. And I think sometimes thinking you knowing what you're doing is worse, and messing with something is worse than not knowing. And I think that may be the case because. And if you think about how they do this, you're doing mathematical modeling and you're trying to reduce human behavior to an equation. And that doesn't always work. And it's even more challenging than that because you're basing it on what happened in the past, which may or may not be the same thing in the future. So I certainly like economic models, but I also use them, how shall I say, with caution.
But Jim,
and you can get seduced by the elegance of your models.
Well, that's true, but and maybe that's the problem is that they try to maybe overanalyze this and introduce all this complex economic, financial, mathematical models into this, but it was pretty obvious, was it not, sir, that we got the Fed expanding its balance sheet dramatically in an effort to stimulate the economy and offset the slowdown caused by COVID. We got, as I call it, helicopter money being sprayed across the landscape of the country. How could that not result in inflation?
And then, in fact, that little story here is my wife and I turn on the news in the morning, and I remember when they did it, I just said to her, we're going to hate this one day, and it's going to be sooner than we think.
I just don't see how they missed it, honestly. And then here we are, and a short year later, we got the same individual, the chair of the Fed, now saying, well, not only is it not transitory as we expected, but it's a lot stickier because our efforts to rein it in by increasing the Fed funds rate have been somewhat ineffective at this point. And I don't think Mr. Powell is going to be happy until he sees significant job losses. What we've seen thus far is lots of shedding of jobs from the technology sector. And I'm sure you're aware of this, Jim. Normally, that's the first place we see job losses. It's also the first place we see recovery of jobs after we have gone through a recessionary period and so forth. We just getting started.
That's what I think, too. And I think, to your point, tech tends to lead. And then tech was probably due for some correction.
Yeah.
Because if you look at all the benefits they had, and they weren't playing in the real world either. You know, when your biggest worry is what time your massage is at work. And then I used to have a boss when I worked for AT&T was going through difficulties. He used to tell people, you know what? In most of the rest of the world, you're happy if you get invited back next year. You know,
that's right.
You know,
well, let's talk.
Of course, it didn't go over well, but his point was making money is hard, and I think we're going to see some of those corrections. You know, in the real estate business, not so much in Starkville because there's some nifty things going on here with the aluminum plant.
Right.
You know, housing slowed down, particularly at the high end. You know,
yeah.
You know,
that's what I was going to pivot to. Is this is starting to come home to roost as it pertains to consumers, because we're seeing significant decrease in not only housing sales, new home sales, but we're starting to see a retreat of housing prices, which I think is a natural reaction to the increase of borrowing costs, mortgage rates up, and we're starting to see a significant increase in delinquencies of auto loans, which are also, of course, a big household expenditure. What do you think?
Well, I think that's kind of the inevitable thing that happens. I guess the wax a little poetically, you know, episodes of Cheap Money never end well. You know. There are probably some people who bought some houses at the peak, and they may never get that money back. My wife's a real estate broker, so therefore that's how I know more of this stuff. But in our market, the high end, and she will tell me I got the number wrong. I'm going to say the dividing point was somewhere around $750,000. None of those have moved in the last year.
Wow.
You know, so,
wow.
No. And then what the other interesting phenomenon is, okay, if you were in the high end, now you're in the medium high end. So basically everybody is ratcheting down based on affordability.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, because you go get a mortgage and you're priced out. A lender, when they put their math on it to determine what you can afford and service based on your household income, that's bringing the price of housing down that you can afford and qualify for a loan.
Well, that's right. And then you could argue maybe we built too big of houses, but since we were talking about Hayek this morning, he had an interesting line that not everybody agrees with. Something called malinvestment. And it basically says when interest rates are too low, you do riskier things to get a return. And then when it fixes itself, it's upside down. Think about if I was talking to you in 2009, think about all the houses in Vegas that were upside down. And, so, you know, and then my imagination just kind of wanders. Would that money have been better spent funding a new pharmaceutical company than a McMansion in the Vegas? You know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would like to think it's some miracle drug is better, but, you know, I just keep rewarding my own ox, I think.
Well, you and I believe, would remember the early 1980s Houston. Remember the just street after street of footage showing all these houses, brand new, built with for sale signs. Couldn't move them.
Yeah.
Same sort of deal is happening.
Well, you know, history. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from Mark Twain. History doesn't always repeat, but it often rhymes. If you dig back to the roots of that, it was in cheap money in the 70s. You know, and if you study the Fed, Arthur Burns is like persona non grata because he succumbed to political pressures. And then inflation got out of hand, and it took the Paul Volcker and a lot of pain to make that
That's right.
end.
That's right. Jim, always good talking to you, sir. Appreciate you coming on, and enjoy the day in the game.
All right, but right now I got to tell some people about the Fed.
You got it.
They probably
Have
thought
fun
Federal
with
Reserve
that.
was a good bourbon.
Jim Leggette, lecturer of economics at Mississippi State, has been our guest on Middays. We're stepping aside for a break. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth Studios.